Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. I'm going to call this episode the closing remarks. This is our closing thoughts on what we saw against the 49ers and kind of pushing into that awkward territory, waiting for the Super Bowl. We figured Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would be easy, but then you start flirting around Thursday, Friday, getting through the weekend, Monday of next week. It's like, oh, it's so close, yet it's so far away. But I still have some things to share when it comes to whatever Kyle Shanahan did. And I can't believe, honestly, I can't believe that they utilized a tight end who wasn't good enough to play in the week before. Go home if you don't win against Dallas, and that tight end wasn't dressed. Yet Kyle Shanahan asked him to block Hassan Reddick, which ultimately led to Brock Purdy tearing his UCL. So let me get this straight. Coaching malpractice showed up in the NFC Championship game from Kyle Shanahan. Call me surprised. And I know they didn't know how bad the injury was when he was on the sidelines. But could you imagine a manager keeping a pitcher in a game that needed Tommy John? Oh my God. Oh my God. You got to go Wildcat. You have to go Christian McCaffrey. You can't put that poor kid back in the football game. I don't care what stage it is. I don't give a damn if it's the NFC Championship or not. The dude has a torn UCL, and he's throwing the football for you? Honestly, once again, I think that's coaching malpractice. Kyle Shanahan is supposed to be one of the biggest gurus in the sport. He went from in a higher regards for me. I thought of him in a higher regards to a big dip for the atrocious coaching I saw on the big stage. How do you ask that tight end to block Hassan Reddick? I don't know. It's honestly, it's stupid. It's stupid. He wasn't good enough to even be in uniform. He was inactive against the Dallas Cowboys. He did play against Seattle. He had a couple of regular season games. But see, this is where the disrespect comes for Hassan Reddick throughout the entire league. And it's funny because Darius Slay, who does his own little post-game review stuff on The Volume, I believe, which is Colin Cowherd's media platform, and he retweeted one of the posts where he was talking about they utilize what the media says. They see and hear everything. You might think because they pretend they don't hear it, that they don't, but they do. And it's just the tiniest little phrases that makes them pissed off, that gives them some fire. And George Kittle used the phrase, the Eagles are good on paper. On paper, I promise you that 70 sacks is not just something that's on paper. There's substance to that. There's a reason why on paper it says 70 sacks. And that's because they feast. That's because they eat you alive. That's because they have special talent like Hassan Reddick, who will blow up your quarterback's UCL if you put a tight end who was inactive the week before right in front of his face. Now, I love Jeff Mosher of Inside the Birds. I love him. He joins us normally on Mondays for the 5:30 segment because there's a crossover between the best show ever and Inside the Birds radio. But because the Sixers played Monday, they switched that to Tuesday so they could have the full 2-hour slot. That's not really the meat and potatoes of the story. But he brought up the other side of that. Well, if Kyle Shanahan utilized this formation to run certain plays in the past and it worked, and if Hassan Reddick dropped back, and then you need to weigh out everything when you're the coach. And this is where he's so dug into, I don't care what other teams are doing. I'm just focused on how beautiful of an offense I can run. I just care about my scheme and how everyone talks about me as a genius. You need to weigh in that it's possible that this guy is going to be left alone to block the best pass rusher in the NFL this season. And if you don't think about that, shame on you. If you don't think about that, your quarterback's going to need Tommy Johns. It's crazy. I'd be pissed if Nick Sirianni left some inactive guy to block Aaron Donald, to block J.J. Watt in his prime. Hell, to block Hassan Reddick if he was on an opposing team. And him and Shane Steichen are asking some up and down guy in an NFC Championship game to hold his own. It's just dumb. It's stupidity. So that's why when the crying 49ers fans are still dripping in tears and still letting it all out and still making excuses, saying, well, you really didn't beat us because the 49ers didn't have their quarterback. They didn't have their quarterback because your coach was dumb, which was a huge, huge, huge conversation heading into the game. Is Nick Sirianni and Steichen and Gannon versus Kyle Shanahan and DeMeco Ryans. And I thought Kyle Shanahan would come up tiny and super small because, well, that's sort of been what's talked about. He misses out on details. Guess what? The Eagles don't. Something that's sliding under the radar, which is massive in the grand scheme of things, especially knowing how brutal the NFL is with these instant replays and all this. Joseph, on the play that Nick Sirianni did challenge, because he does have brains and he does actually pay attention to what's happening on the football field, when he challenged the Hassan Reddick play that went from an incomplete pass to a fumble, if you go watch Joseph, he picked up the football and started going. Now, in real time, I didn't think it was a fumble. It did look like his hand was moving forward and it was incomplete. But as you saw, it left his hand, it slipped out, it hit his forearm, and then it went a bunch of yards forward. This team pays attention to everything. And I was listening to Ruben Frank, who covers the team for NBC Sports Philadelphia, of course, and he was going and talking about how in practice they go through this all the time. No matter what the situation is, no matter what's going on, if the football is on the ground, everyone go get the football. Pick up the football. You never know. They pay attention to everything. Well, you go back to the previous week when the 49ers played Dallas. Mitchell stepping out of bounds, keeping the clock going. It didn't end up costing them. Well, that's because Dallas sucks too. But that's the difference. That's the difference. And I'll keep it 100. I'll say the same thing about the Eagles with certain plays. When you're playing Kansas City and you're playing Andy Reid, not that you have to be legitimately perfect, meaning never missing a throw. You're going to miss a throw as a quarterback. With that said, everything matters so much, right? I do feel that if Jalen Hurts misses A.J. Brown on the deep ball, where the Eagles could go up 14-0 in the Super Bowl, instead it's still 7-0, that matters. Like, you have to complete that. You have to punch them in the jugular. You can't miss those plays. Now, there might be another pass that you miss, but that one, that home run hit, that can't happen. Even the throw to Devontae, where he had to use the one arm, and it wasn't a catch, but it was a catch. Throw needs to be better. That stuff needs to be cleaned up. But throws is different than details of the game, the smarts, thinking the game. You don't see it too many times. What you saw Nick Sirianni do, blow up on the sidelines because they had to utilize a timeout when they were trying to draw the team off sides to maybe go for a 2-point conversion instead of the extra point. I was a little surprised to see that. Because that was a bit of a hiccup. And we're humans. That stuff happens. That one's not as egregious as others. But it's rare. The percentage that you see it with the Birds is just not like these other teams. Oh, the 49ers, the flags. Yeah. But when the offensive line is holding up, and now you're asking your secondary to hold on to A.J. Brown and to hold on to Dallas Goedert and to hold on to Devontae Smith for extra time, you don't think a hold is going to happen? You don't think grabbing the shoulder pads or grabbing the waist and twisting and turning isn't going to be a part of it? When Mailata is pancaking Bosa to the ground, and Bosa's just laying there basically admitting, I'm screwed. I got nothing. I got beat bad. These corners and these secondary pieces who we knew had limitations to begin with, it's going to cause flags. That's what happens when you win in the trenches as badly as you do. And when the other team is as poor as they are because they can't beat what your offensive line provides. This type of offensive line, I asked this yesterday. Will we see something as dominant? You'll see fantastic offensive line play with the Eagles organization for years to come. Cam Jurgens is going to slide it. Landon Dickerson, the guy is absolutely unreal. Mailata, there's a lot of youth up there. Losing Kelsey, though, I'm saying it's going to be great. But right now, it's the best I've ever seen, ever. And I don't know if you can get this again. You're not aware until you really study what they do. Play to play. Miles Sanders untouched to the end zone. Punching it in for 7. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful what they do. So, we had a couple fun little questions that we asked on the air. And I thought this one was fascinating. We put up a Twitter poll, and there was 2,200 votes. Howie's best acquisition this year? A.J. Brown, Hassan Reddick, Bradbury, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson were the 4 options. A.J. Brown came in. Actually, we'll go backwards. Bradbury got 1% of the vote. I don't know if I mentioned that there were 2,200 votes on this or not. But Bradbury, 1% of the votes. Think about the huge addition he provided. We had Steven Nelson over there. We had to throw Avonte Maddox on the outside in previous seasons. This guy did so well that he's going to get a fat bag that the Birds can't match, and they're going to have to look elsewhere. Specifically, lethal talent in the draft at a young age that you can have at a cost-efficient pace for a little bit of time. But that's definitely been a weak area for Howie Roseman to draft. But the fact that he's getting 1%, I don't think knocks him. It just tells you on how incredible these acquisitions have been. C.J. Gardner-Johnson at 3%. The dude was leading the league in interceptions and all this stuff. He was catching footballs and being a beast in that secondary, going from nickel to safety. And we didn't know how that would play out and how that would pan out with Jonathan Gannon's scheme. And it was A+. A.J. Brown, only 27%. Hassan Reddick led the way with 69%. Now, I wonder, is that just recency biased because he blew up that game? Maybe. This is where I have a difficult time. And there's really no wrong answer. But I personally believe the answer is A.J. Brown. And hear me out. Because with Hassan Reddick, wow, look at how much damage he's done to opposing quarterbacks. And I know, I'm sure you're sick and tired of hearing the phrase 70 sacks by now, but I'm going to continue to highlight it because it is that insane and it is that wild. If you remove those sacks from Hassan, and let's say you plugged somebody else in, you didn't acquire Hassan Reddick in the offseason, but you got another, just a solid defensive end, solid. Maybe you get 6 sacks, 7 sacks. Well, you're still above everybody else. You're still up there, number 1 in the NFL, scary as hell. If you remove A.J. Brown from this offense and Devontae's just your number 1, and then you have Quez Watkins, Pascal, and someone else is in there instead of A.J. Brown, just a solid wide receiver, I think your offensive plan and the way you can run your offense changes significantly more than what your defense can do. It won't be as scary and it won't be as game-breaking, but still, I think you'd still be up there number 1 in the NFL in sacks, and teams would be afraid. But do you see the drop-off in the offense without AJ? And I don't want to downplay what the drop-off without Hassan Reddick would be. But I think that's kind of how I look at it and I angle it. And from that sense, I have A.J. Brown up at the top as the biggest acquisition. But the fact that we can sit here and debate which one, think about those 4. And there were more in season. Sue. He knocked out their 5th-string quarterback. Sue. And I hope he's okay because his head did hit the ground pretty hard. But I'm just saying, in the NFC Championship game, a guy you brought in mid-season after some flaws and some holes, and Jordan Davis ended up getting banged up, creates havoc. Creates havoc. And before we rock some anytime hotline calls here, I think it's ironic that before each game, public perception is, well, the Giants can beat them. Well, the Niners can beat them. Yet when the Eagles win, what's the response? And how has it been? They haven't played anybody. Well, hold on. Heading into each game, I'm informed that they're going to lose. I'm informed that the other team has a shot. Oh, the 49ers defense. They're going to make it hell. They're going to suffocate you. You're going to have no room to work. These linebackers. And while there's talent there, and there were moments where the Eagles weren't able to get off some of their solid offensive play. There were some drives that were a bit brutal to watch. Why does it flip so heavily when those opposing teams lose? When apparently prior to kickoff, we were going to see what they were all about. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. But that's fine because I know how I feel about it. But the only thing that matters is how the team responds to it. And it seems from Slay's words, from Jalen Hurts and his words, he's still talking about how people didn't want him here at the time of the draft. And he doesn't forget that stuff. And it's always in there. They use it to motivate. And that's cool. Whatever gets the results. Now, to be fair, why I didn't want him is because the timing of it, just paying Wentz, I don't want to relive it. I want to live in the now. I want to live in the right now. And it's funny because I was speaking to some family who live out in Arizona because that's where the Super Bowl is, and they were talking to me about everything and what's going on. And it's just a fun time, right? Because they're from here originally. They moved out there, and they're excited for it. And they go, can you believe it? Can you believe that they're here? And I think to myself, yeah, I can. I can believe it. In 17, not really. It's like, no, I can. Nick Foles, Jason Peters goes down, Big V. You lose some guys, Jordan Hicks at linebacker. I know some of these years all mesh together, but, injuries throughout some of the defensive pieces. It was crazy. But this season, after they start off the record, they start off a goose egg in the loss column for as long as they did, I can believe it. It feels right. And it's a strange feeling, but a good feeling, because this is how I want it to be. All right. Enough of me. Let's get to more of you. Shall we? Let's just hear from all of you that called in to the hotline to express your thoughts and opinions. Let's do it. Oh, hold on 1 second. 1 second. I'm sorry. That's a bad move by me. See, I'm doing this early in the morning, and I didn't have my settings set properly, unless you were able to hear that. But I wasn't. So let's do this again. Here we go.
This is just incredible, man. No way did I think we were going to be in the chip at the beginning of the season. So I want to formally apologize to Howie for when he picked Jalen Hurts. I thought that was an awful pick, but I'm so happy to be wrong. Jonathan Gannon, thank you for playing and calling a great defensive game. And Jalen Hurts, thank you so much for not being a bum like Ben Simmons and improving your game over the offseason last year and taking us to the Super Bowl.
Hey, all valid, all fair. And it's funny you say that because another question we had on the show was, who were you most wrong about when looking at this football team? Now, for this particular season, it was Jalen Hurts. I thought Hurts would put us in a position where Giants fans are right now with their quarterback. Daniel Jones has done enough to satisfy some, but you feel that there's limitations, but you like his mentality and his work ethic, and it seems like guys really respect him in the room. And, you know, he took a big jump, and there were so many issues with turnovers, and you can see throughout the years he's improved on that. So it's one of those things where I don't think Daniel Jones, when you look at it, did a poor job. He's showing growth, but at the end of the day, there's this limitation that puts me, if I was a Giants fan, I'd be very uncomfortable committing to Daniel Jones, because while I appreciate what he did, I don't know if the ceiling is big enough for the ultimate goal. And that's no disrespect to all the time he puts into the craft, and it seems like his head's in the right space, but at the end of the day, you either got it or you don't. It's either you have it or you don't. And the way that you watch Jalen Hurts go about business, and the way that you see Joe Burrow and these other cats attack every time they're on the field, it's like some of it's just God-given, right? And Daniel Jones is in this awkward spot. Did enough, but does he have the full ceiling capability? It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. There's pros and cons, and you're going to have this huge debate. I thought that's what Hurts would do, where he'd show his toughness. He'd be solid. He'd have great games. He'd have some bad games, and he'd throw the football poorly, which would bring all those haters back up. But then he'd have a good 3-touchdown game, and he'd use his legs, and everyone would be high on what he could do if he did that consistently, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this season, Jalen Hurts being in the MVP race, and just the way that we see his mental makeup, which is so rare and raw and legit, I'm all in, man. So for this season, it was Jalen Hurts. For the entire organization, though, come on. What Nick Sirianni did on that opening day press conference, we weren't wrong to wonder how that would play. We weren't wrong. Not many times you see a head coach get announced, and it sounds like that. At the same time, I was willing to say, let's wait until football goes on. Let's wait to see the results, because Doug Peterson had his locker room rolling, and I didn't think he was some stud when it comes to interviews and whatnot. At the same time, Doug Peterson compared to him was like a 10. Really was a 15 out of a 1 to 10 scale. But we see Nick is authentic. Nick is Nick. And it works once he settled down all the emotions. But hey, I don't care how. I just care that you do it. But there's another one, Gannon. I didn't know about Gannon. I didn't know about Sanders. There was a lot of questions. So let's think about it. The most important positions in the game: head coach, quarterback, defensive coordinator. Those were my 3 concerns, and they all knocked it out of the park. And also at the running back. Now, long term, you're not looking at Miles Sanders, and I'm not paying him, and I don't even. I want him back if it's cost efficient, but it's not going to be cost efficient. But you can plug and play in that position, especially with the threat of Jalen Hurts. But speaking of the DC, you might be in a position where your coordinators are back. Denver has their guy. Houston has their guy, DeMeco Ryans, which Gannon was definitely someone that they had their eyes on. Right now, it's Indianapolis, which could be Jeff Saturday, and Arizona. Is there any I'm missing? Does Shane Steichen get one of those jobs? If not, maybe you could run this thing back, which would be unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, let's take another one.
What's going on, birds? Honestly, that wasn't a great performance by Hurts, but we also played the best defense in the league. I think in the Super Bowl, no matter who they face, we'll have a better offensive output because the defense we face won't be as good. The Eagles' defense will probably be better than whatever defense we face. But man, am I excited to go to the Super Bowl again. I mean, I just love this team. I'm in love with them. And if we can win it all, second time in 5 years, man, would that be a statement.
Oh, of course. And obviously that call came in right after the game before that Chiefs-Bengals game finished up. The defense. Yeah, you brought up the defense. Here's the thing. I just thought Hurts played bad. There were plays to be made. There were throws that could have been completed, and he just didn't complete them. He didn't look right. Now, maybe there's still a issue with the shoulder. Not a big issue. Not a major issue. Just one that's there, and these 2 weeks will help clean that up. Same with the Pat Mahomes ankle. He's hobbling around, running on one leg, making plays out there, so the time's going to help him too. But I just think he didn't have it that day. I'm not trying to discredit the 49ers, but there were plays to be made, and I just think on that day, he didn't make it. Those deep shots, they got to connect. They need to be better. He was just off. That just happens. There's definitely a percentage, linebacker play, the speed of what they bring, the physicality. But here's the thing. They matched the 49ers' physicality. They're not used to other teams being able to do it. They didn't expect. And that's the key. And that comes down to coaching. I don't know if Kyle Shanahan and that coaching staff had the 49ers prepared for what we can do, for what this team is capable of doing when it comes to battling with physicality. I think what George Kittle said, they're good on paper. I think that's part of the message that Kyle Shanahan was delivering. So once again, he set his team up for failure. And I'm basing that on what I saw on the football field. And if he didn't sell that message, then the team didn't respond to whatever he was saying vocally and whatever he was showing in film and showing their strengths. Maybe he just kept pointing out this is their bad spots. This is what they do bad. Instead of preparing them for, they do excel in this area. And there's going to be times that we're in this spot, and you got to know they're good at that. Look, I get showing deficiencies. I'm sure the Eagles looked at their secondary and said, we can do this. At the same time, they ran the football and said, they're good here, but we can do this. And they went on the ground and kept running along. Gainwell mixing in that 17-yard run. I'm just saying, it seemed like one team didn't expect that the other was able to meet the challenge. And the way they ran the football, and I don't want to hear either if you look at the numbers, they only averaged about 3.5 yards per carry. I'm not talking box score. This game wasn't a box score game. Sometimes there is. For example, Hurts against Green Bay ran for 157 yards on the ground. 157 on the ground. Against Tennessee, he had 4 touchdowns. There's games where box scores are appealing. Sometimes there's games that aren't. And this game really isn't. You're right. It wasn't a game that you can go back to the box score and go, look how much they ran all over them. But with that said, I'll go back to these drives. 11 plays, 66 yards, 5 minutes and 12 seconds. 14 plays, 75 yards, 6 minutes and 53 seconds. 15 plays, 91 yards, almost 8 minutes on the football field. The ability to make you grind and make you battle for that long on the field as a defense, the run game dictated that. And if you don't see that with your eyeballs, well, I have concerns. We'll take one more.
So for the legions of 49er fans that took over the Xfinity Live and took over the city of Philadelphia. They came out in waves. I hope you enjoyed your stay. There's some parting gifts for you at the door. Now get the fuck out. Another box checked. Eagles win. I don't want to hear about Brock Purdy anymore. I'm just savoring this victory. I mean, Hassan Reddick turned into Joel Embiid in this game. You want to disrespect me? You don't want to give me the recognition that I deserve? I'll go out and kick your ass, and he did today. Jalen, not the best of games, but he didn't turn the ball over, and that was critical. No turnovers for the Eagles, multiple turnovers for the 49ers.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, actually, because this 49ers team, they thrive off of creating those turnovers. Takeaways was a big thing for them. But it's difficult when you can't get to the quarterback at the same rate because there's Lane Johnson, there's Jordan Mailata, there's Landon Dickerson. Good news on Landon Dickerson. It seems like he'll be good to go. Playing through something, but good to go. Not surprised, but we were waiting an update knowing that he did have an injury in that game. All right. Like I said, closing remarks on this 49ers effort. Where do we go from here? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll get through this. I promise. It's actually moving a little quicker than I thought. Now, maybe I just jinxed myself and jinxed all of you out there. If so, I apologize. I can be an ass. I don't know if that's breaking news or not, but I can be an ass. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love you, and I'll catch you on the next one.